Over 1 year and a quarter ago, arguably the most highly anticipated game of all time released, Sackboy: A Big Adventure. No, I mean, seriously, Cyberpunk 2077. This was a game that was supposed to be everything. It was coming from the developer of one of the most beloved games of all time, that being The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. CD Projekt Red, for a good half-decade, had garnered more and more goodwill from the gaming community than anyone else. This came at a time when many of the industry-leading gaming companies were finding themselves embroiled in controversy after controversy. CDPR, though, was among the few that represented the gold standard, and they certainly used that position to their benefit, whether that be to score some easy PR points whenever a competitor did something anti-consumer, or whether that be to build trust with gamers and persuading them into pre-ordering Cyberpunk 2077. CD Projekt Red was taking this industry by storm, quickly becoming a European superpower in gaming, until everything came crashing down on December 10th, 2020. Millions of players were there day one, and by the end of the week, many had already moved on. There was a feeling of betrayal that many felt. CDPR would for the next few months deal with a PR nightmare. The rest is history, something I've documented in multiple videos now. Cyberpunk 2077 was a mess at launch, unplayable on older platforms. It was an embarrassment that many CDPR developers felt saddened by, but not necessarily surprised, as behind the scenes, many had seen the writing on the wall for quite some time, with there being indication even before launch that this game was not going to be ready until 2022. They were making a revolutionary game without the proper investment made into the technical side of the game, yet the marketing campaign kept chugging along, getting bigger and bigger as the game's launch approached. It fueled expectations that were a bit unrealistic and overly ambitious, something that some within CDPR wish had been handled differently. These factors spelled disaster, and that's exactly what happened. Still though, after talking with a few CDPR developers, most do not feel optimistic about the future, as there remain serious concerns about the decision-making of management. After 16 months, CD Projekt Red and Cyberpunk 2077 have indeed changed, although there are many questions about what the future will hold for this once beloved developer and their controversial game. A lot has happened since December of 2020, some good and a lot bad. CDPR has indeed fallen, and the hope is that before the inevitable Witcher 4 release, they will truly evolve as a developer, enforcing systemic change with how they go about game development and creating a better work environment. Thus far, we have not seen these changes, but if CDPR truly wishes to rise back up, much more is needed than just a switch of game engines. Now, before we proceed forward, I want to thank today's sponsor, Hellofresh, who has made a video like this possible. As someone who is often working in the office for long hours and afterwards feels a bit too lazy trying to figure out what to put together based on what's in my fridge or pantry, and also not wanting to resort to cheap fast food, this is where Hellofresh comes in, with savory meals like penne with beef meatballs and a creamy mushroom sauce. America's #1 meal kit with more 5-star reviews than any other meal kit, Hellofresh makes the process super easy and affordable. You search through Hellofresh's vast and ever-expanding list of easy-to-follow recipes for the fresh meals that you'll enjoy, and once you've chosen what you want, pre-measured ingredients are delivered right to your door. 72% cheaper than dining at a restaurant, HelloFresh offers many different options, such as quick and easy meals, which in my case is much appreciated, as I spend less time in the kitchen cooking and more time creating new videos like this for you. But sometimes a fast meal isn't what I want, and that's why it's great that there's options for when I'm working out or having a big family get-together. Ultimately, HelloFresh offers tons of choices for really everyone, even the picky eaters. If you're looking to upgrade your cooking and lifestyle, begin the delicious new journey today. Use my link or go to hellofresh.com and use code POGLEGACYKILLA16 for up to 16 free meals plus 3 surprise gifts across 6 HelloFresh boxes plus free shipping. Thank you again to HelloFresh for sponsoring today's video. In the months following the release of Cyberpunk 2077, numerous developers have moved on from the studio, wanting a fresh start. The game director of The Witcher 3 even started his own gaming company, Rebel Wolves, alongside a few other former CDPR lead developers, with one of the core principles being that the development team comes first, something that was very publicly known as not being a principle that CDPR's executives held in high regard during the development of games such as The Witcher 3 and Cyberpunk 2077. With that said, it shouldn't be surprising surprising to discover that retaining talent is something that CDPR has struggled with. About 7 months ago, we explored a lengthy list of veteran departures that CDPR has suffered. That includes a lot of key talent that was responsible for the Witcher trilogy of games and Cyberpunk 2077. John Mamaeus, longtime executive producer and head of CDPR's Krakow studio, departed in March of 2021. Konrad Tomaskiewicz, Witcher 3 game director, left in May 2021 after about 18 years with the company. Sebastian Stepien, a longtime creative director, left for Blizzard in the middle of Cyberpunk's development. One of CDPR's lead engineers left soon after The Witcher 3's launch, and following the release of Cyberpunk 2077, a number of lead developers departed. All in all, just over half of the listed Witcher 3 devs in the game's credits are no longer working for CDPR, and since that investigation I did 7 months ago, this list has grown quite a bit, to about now 60% of the Witcher 3 devs no longer being with the company. This includes some very notable departures, with many of which leaving for companies such as Activision Blizzard, Techland, and the newly formed Rebel Wolves. The game director of The Witcher 3 left in 2021, and to start 2022, the secondary game director of The Witcher 3, Matusz Kinnick, left the company after 15 years. Longtime technical director Christoph Christen departed after 13 years with CDPR just last month, and actually 5 of the top 6 names in The Witcher 3 credits are no longer with the company. One of Cyberpunk 2077's lead writers, Jacob Smalik, departed last year after 9 years with CDPR, along with quite a few other senior and lead developers. It's been a roller coaster within CDPR the last couple of years, with former and current staff telling me that many have just had enough. The culture within wasn't improving, that's especially the case in certain departments, and the final nail in the coffin was the launch of Cyberpunk 2077. Last November, CD Projekt CEO Adam Kaczynski discussed the mistakes that they made with Cyberpunk 2077 and his vision of the future. Kaczynski, speaking to a Polish newspaper, emphasized, "Cyberpunk 2077 is the biggest, most ambitious, and definitely the most complicated project in our 27-year history. In almost every aspect, we tried to take it a step further, just as we've done with every Witcher game we released. Releasing a game in a new franchise brings many challenges and risks, especially when the concept is so complex. We're proud of many aspects of the game, but as we know, not everything went our way. We believe that in the long run, Cyberpunk 2077 will be perceived as a very good game, and like our other titles, it will sell for years." And Kaczynski would further add, "Of course, the original release taught us a lot. It gave us a kick and motivated us to make changes that will make us better in the future." One of those quote-unquote changes came just a number of weeks ago, with CDPR being forced to rely on a lot of inexperienced talent the last few years, which especially is an issue on the technical side. It's not shocking to see arguably the first big move post-Cyberpunk 2077 is the company ditching their proprietary engine for Epic Games' Unreal Engine 5. Cyberpunk 2077 and its future content will continue using Red Engine, but CDPR's next games, such as The Witcher 4, will make the jump to Unreal Engine. The announcement may have been a surprise to the public, but within CDPR this was an expected move, a move that some claim was being pushed for quite some time, thus why many veteran programmers have been leaving and plan to leave the company. The belief or overall consensus the public have is that switching to an established engine like Unreal Engine should do great wonders for CDPR, who struggled to build the necessary infrastructure for their bold vision with Cyberpunk. Still though, some CDPR staff are skeptical that Unreal Engine 5 will solve all of their problems. It's viewed that Red Engine, while it had its issues, was something that had made great strides before and after Cyberpunk's launch. A lot of the blame I've heard is on the lack of skilled engineers and technical leadership within CDPR. Regardless, Unreal Engine 5 is the future for CDPR games. There are certainly questions and concerns over the move, especially in regard to the engine's open world capabilities and the fact that no AAA game has released yet featuring this engine. With time though, we'll see if this was the right decision, but even looking at this from an outside perspective, it's quite clear something had to change, and CDPR's management obviously felt switching to an established engine should make for an easier and smoother development process. The Red Engine and veteran departures are just a few of the many problems that this company is grappling with at the moment, which unfortunately these problems have all contributed to CDPR's reputation being severely tarnished with the public. Not necessarily just gamers, but also the press and also potential talent. The newly announced game director of The Witcher 4, Jason Slama, has already made a commitment that there will be no crunch with CDPR's next game, but again, former and current staff are not believing this for a second. That, let's call it skepticism, should not be surprising considering the promises management made that were very publicly broken during Cyberpunk 2077's development. As it stands though, we are well north of 450 days since the release of what should be a wake-up call, and thus far there have been some big changes and improvements made, but Cyberpunk 2077 is largely still the same game that launched back in December 2020. The difference being that following the launch of the next-gen update and patch 1.5, which came in February 2022, the game runs much better and features a few nice quality of life improvements, although much of the core issues players had with the game's design day one remain, and it's honestly questionable if it'll ever meet the expectations that some have or had. For as revolutionary as this game was hyped up to be, the open world is still taking baby steps to meeting the systems that were implemented in games such as Grand Theft Auto 3, which yes, released 20 years ago. Still though, CDPR is putting in the work. With the game's first real major update, which came this February, CDPR rebalanced the gameplay, added vehicle NPC, enemy AI improvements, changed map icons, improved weather effects, introduced some new animations, added new ray tracing effects, and addressed a ton of bugs and performance issues. This was a major step in the right direction. From September 2021 to the 1.5 update release in mid-February, CDPR went radio silent, and that again is the case. CDPR quite obviously taking a note from the Hello Games No Man's Sky playbook of not talking until there's something to show. So indeed, 16 months after launch, there is no dramatic comeback story to share. Cyberpunk 2077 still has a long road to go of reaching a potential No Man's Sky-like comeback story. There is very much a lot unknown about this game's future. In its current state, and as was true at launch, Cyberpunk 2077 features a beautiful, lush open world, a gripping narrative, well-constructed characters, and action-packed combat that is further enhanced by a spectacular, underrated soundtrack. It's just such a shame that much of the positive traits that Cyberpunk carries comes alongside negatives, as the open world is great to look at, but once you interact with it, you realize how empty and repetitive it is. While combat can be a high-octane blast, especially when shooting, many of the more violent encounters that you have in Night City outside of missions don't feel different enough. And without something like, say, vehicle gunfights or chases, things can get stale pretty fast. The narrative of Cyberpunk 2077 tells the story of one type of V, and that's about it. The role-playing elements are severely lacking and don't offer enough variety. You can choose a life path, but its impact is only felt for the first 15 minutes of gameplay. The character creator gives a decent amount of customization that feels a bit too pointless, considering you barely see your in-game character besides when you jump on a motorcycle, visit your inventory, or play around with the game's photo mode. While the game's AI has been improved, it still very much needs a lot of work, especially police AI, which still has NCPD officers spawning out of the blue 50 feet away instead of the 10 feet away it was at launch when you commit a crime. It's quite clear though, with the addition of water effects and NPCs reacting sometimes differently to player aggression, CDPR's management definitely did not like the video compilation after video compilation of players showing off LEGO and GTA games from the early 2000s having more competent and realistic AI than the game that was marketed as the start of the next generation of gaming. Unfortunately though, one of the most glaring issues that I have real doubts it'll ever be properly addressed is last-gen performance. Even now, the game does not run very well on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One consoles. There are still some nasty and noticeable FPS drops. As I've said since launch, I think it was a mistake to launch this game on this hardware, especially following patch 1.5 in which certain content was not released on last-gen consoles due to quote-unquote memory constraints. This is a problem that will continue with whatever new content is added to the game in the future, and it makes me wonder if CDPR will end up dropping support for the Xbox One and PS4 consoles in the not so near future, maybe even before expansions come about. It's just unfortunate that all of this could have and should have been avoided, but instead long before release, CDPR's management ignored the warnings their engineers gave them and pushed ahead. A very clear business-driven decision to get the game on as much hardware as possible, but in the end, it backfired big time. Regardless, this is what Cyberpunk 2077 is right now. These are just some of the major things that need to be addressed and further improved. I say some as there is more. It's a laundry list. CDPR certainly has their work cut out for themselves and they know it. We still don't know much in an official capacity related to the remaining free DLCs, story expansions, or supposed multiplayer component. We currently have this very broad roadmap which only touched on early 2022 and nothing beyond that. In an investor call that happened just the other day, we received confirmation that most of the work on fixing Cyberpunk is complete, and that right now CDPR CDPR has shifted their attention to the upcoming Cyberpunk expansion, with it slated for a release sometime in 2023. CDPR's CFO teased that the upcoming major expansion would feature a new storyline and that right now they're planning further DLCs, although he would not go into specifics. CEO Adam Kaczynski also revealed that patch 1.6 is currently being worked on, with it expected to release in the coming months. As with previous updates, it should be expected that free DLC will launch alongside this patch. Now, also recently, CDPR Quest Director Pavel Sasko confirmed once again that work is underway on improvements and new content for the game. Sasko saying on the game's subreddit, "I can assure you that we're working on an expansion, we're working on stuff for you guys. Besides that didn't change, we're still improving the game because we are all aware there is work to be done." And Sasko would further add, "We're very happy you guys liked patch 1.5 and that gives us more incentive to work for you guys because you show your appreciation for it. That's as much as I can tell you. We are working on stuff for you, like I'm literally daily reviewing quests, talking to people about stuff, so it is happening." Besides broad, I suppose, encouraging statements like that, Cyberpunk 2077's future has remained a mystery of sorts, although data miners have discovered some of what's to come. With free DLC thanks to the release of the first batch, which came last year, it confirmed a data mine from the summer of 2021. Released thus far has been an alternative outfit for Johnny Silverhand, limited in-game mirror customization, a new Archer Quartz Bandit vehicle, 2 new jackets, new photo mode poses, a new budget arms power submachine gun, a new Dara Polytechnic power assault rifle, new weapon attachments such as scopes and muzzle brakes, and the most significant one to date being 4 purchasable apartments. There is apparently a few more free DLCs to come, and what was found were code names for each of them. The current speculation is that what's to come will be a new Game Plus mode, new tech, blunt, power, and smart weapons, new melee finisher animations, another new vehicle, 4 new gigs, and possibly some sort of transmog system which was found in the game's 1.5 update files. What you're currently seeing on your screen is some of the gameplay related to the upcoming unreleased weapons that were added to the game's files with patch 1.5. On PC, this content can be accessed through the game's console, and the weapons that are soon to be added to Cyberpunk includes the M8 70 HB Power LMG, the semi-auto all-awesome power shotgun, the Kappa Smart Pistol, the Kolek Power Precision Rifle, the Senko LX Power SMG, the Kyubi Power Assault Rifle, and then we also have a couple of new melee options, which includes the Kukri, which in the game's files it's listed as a chain sword, then we have a tomahawk, and then a new different type of combat knife. These weapons are very much still a work in progress, as some of the weapons' sound doesn't work properly, and I do imagine that there's going to be tweaks made to these weapons in the future. But they are in the game and they are accessible, and we are able to use them right now, at least on PC. Now, another piece of content that is likely future free DLC, which I just mentioned a second ago, Transmog. This was found in the patch 1.5, and here is some gameplay of it, accessed through commands, and soon it should be expected that this will be implemented for everyone to use. All of this is perfectly in line with what CDPR previously provided players with The Witcher 3's free DLC. It's not major new stuff that will completely alter the game, but minor new content, a reason to revisit Night City for at least a few hours. According to a financial report that was released at the end of November 2021 and confirmed in an investor call in April 2022, CDPR has been slowly over time shifting more and more resources to Cyberpunk 2077's first expansion. CEO Adam Kaczynski has said that the bulk of our team is working on the Cyberpunk expansion right now, which makes sense considering development of the next-gen versions of the game are now behind them. Although it is worth mentioning that the following graph shared during that same investor call seems to dispute that, as it appears much of the company has moved on from Cyberpunk and are likely working on the next Witcher game instead. Regardless, CDPR still does have a ton of resources invested into the expansion to come, but at least based on this graph, it doesn't align with Kaczynski's remarks, and it makes me wonder if another expansion is at all happening. Back all the way in April 2020, it was said 2 major expansions were planned, but since then, a lot has transpired, and I just think it's interesting we keep hearing a lot about an upcoming expansion instead of expansions. Back in April of last year, it was discovered what CDPR may have in store for the first expansion, and that was new content largely taking place in the underutilized district of Pacifica. While we don't necessarily have a complete idea on the larger narrative at play in this story DLC, we do have some of the street stories or smaller quests. As noted in a Eurogamer piece which examined the data mine, there's mention of a hostage situation involving a group called Kurt's Militia. Another street story requires players to find a hidden den of netrunners, and there's mention of a bomb in a swimming pool. One of the quests has a full description and centers on a character called Anthony Anderson, who the player is expected to rescue from the Scavengers gang. This quest features a new location called Newcomer's Haven, described as an unfinished church repurposed as a shelter, which is presumably located in Pacifica, as the fixer giving out the quest is Mr. Hands. Outside of this data mine, there are some hints of what could be ahead. One of the big narrative setups which is unresolved is the conspiracy surrounding Mr. Blue Eyes, a character that plays a role in one of the game's endings and also can be found secretly watching Jefferson Peralez and V from a distance after they meet during the Dream On quest. Right before V sits down with Peralez, they receive a mysterious call threatening them not to reveal to Peralez the truth that he's being controlled. One of the theories is that the larger mystery happening in Night City is rogue AIs controlling things from the shadows, something that Johnny Silverhand theorizes. There's additionally another strange questline, this time involving a crazy conspiracy theorist, Gary the Prophet, who at the end of his questline has V recover a mysterious chip which once decrypted says Projekt Oracle command to execute plans. When V returns to Gary, he is gone, with it revealed by a disciple of his that men in black suits with blue eyes abducted him. So the belief is that these individuals with blue eyes that appear around Night City are actually inhabited by rogue AIs. What their plan is, how this involves V, and what could happen is unknown, but the foundation for this storyline has been set by CDPR, and it's reasonably speculated that this will be the focus of one of the upcoming story expansions. Now, arguably the most concerning addition supposedly coming in the future to Cyberpunk is multiplayer, and that too was data mined just after launch. What was found were a few interesting details which at the time pointed to CDPR aiming to create a multiplayer component comparable to the likes of Rockstar Games' Grand Theft Auto Online. Data miners discovered mentions of heists, a deathmatch mode, as well as hints of peer-to-peer connections. Now the issue with this data mine, as well as the ones related to free DLC and story expansions, is the fact that most of this information comes from months ago and things change. CDPR very publicly have indicated that their original multiplayer plans may no longer exist, especially because at one point in 2021 it looked like multiplayer may have been entirely cancelled. In a Q&A session done in November 2021, CEO Adam Kaczynski reiterated their plans to introduce multiplayer functionality, but stressed that this would come gradually. Regardless, this is what players have discovered about the future of Cyberpunk 2077, and while CDPR has not officially announced or revealed anything, we should be getting insight into what's ahead any day now. For the time being, all the attention is on the modding scene, which you could argue is keeping this game alive and flourishing. It's largely responsible for the game having around 20,000 concurrent players on Steam, and it's the reason why I play the game every few weeks. There's always some new wacky, creative, or lewd mod to take a look at. This indeed was one of the smart decisions that CDPR made with this game, making it easy for modders to go wild with it. Just to highlight a few, there's Cyber Engine tweaks, which serves as the framework for many other mods to be functional, but it also includes a console allowing players to change narrative choices they made earlier on, increase all of their stats, and add items, money, vehicles, weapons, and so on and so forth. The vehicle combat mod does just as you might expect, implements vehicle combat and chases, a feature that is greatly missing from the vanilla game. Then there's a third-person perspective mod, which is still a bit rough around the edges, but it does allow players the ability to traverse around Night City in third person. One of the biggest pieces of cut content that players were disappointed to see go was a functioning subway, allowing players to travel around Night City on a metro, and the Metro System mod implements it with 19 stations throughout the open world. One of my personal favorites, the E3 2018 heads-up display mod, replaces the heads-up display that's in the vanilla game with the one from the 2018 gameplay demo, or something close to what it looked like. I just personally really dig the bright red look. On top of those big ones, there's mods that feature dozens upon dozens of new outfits and appearances for characters like Judy and Pan Am. Also further customization options for our own V, such as new hairstyles and being able to enjoy your very own cyber arms. There's also even the change your favorite cars mod that allows you to somewhat change the appearance of your vehicles, mostly the color. Another favorite of mine, the appearance change unlocker, makes it that the recent free mirror customization DLC that only offers limited changes to your V, well, this mod fully unlocks it, allowing you to fully change your V's body. I really could go on and on about the amazing things the Cyberpunk 2077 community is doing with this game. There's just so many things for PC players to try out. New features, new vehicles, new outfits, gameplay adjustments and fixes, and so much more. Some of which would get this video demonetized if you know what I mean. Because like Skyrim, the Cyberpunk community is most definitely just, well, let's call it enthusiastic. Cyberpunk 2077 has come a long way, at least in the modding scene. On the other hand, CDPR is still doing a lot to turn around this nightmare themselves. As they've admitted, a lot of work is still needed to be done. CDPR's CEO has been confident that they will turn this around and the public mindset on Cyberpunk 2077 will change. However, no matter what CDPR produces, whether it's phenomenal or decent future content, I have doubts if this game will be viewed positively in the long run like Hello Games' No Man's Sky was able to achieve. At times, CDPR has failed to recognize the errors of their ways, publicly and privately. A few months ago, a developer defended there not being police chases in the game by saying not every open world game has the feature, and used bizarrely Elden Ring and Sonic as examples of that. Another developer explained the infamous and controversial 6-month montage in which they believed there wasn't enough tension in the missions with Jackie Willis, and I guess they used that as the reason for just skipping over all of that. Anyway, Cyberpunk 2077 is now on the right track, even if it's just going a little slower than expected, but I still do wonder how much support is left for this game. With The Witcher 4 now in development, more and more resources such as manpower will be shifting to CDPR's next AAA RPG. After 16 months, just how much life does Night City have? Hopefully that's a question that comes with answers soon, as for now, it's the game's loyal community that keeps it alive and thriving. Looking beyond Cyberpunk, it'll be very interesting seeing how CDPR as a developer evolves and grows. We hear constantly executives speaking about learning from their mistakes and then doing the exact same thing again. Some within CDPR are not confident that the company's executives have learned much from this mess. While they were sued by investors, that lawsuit was settled for a measly $1.85 million earlier this year, and additionally, Cyberpunk 2077 to date has sold over 18 million copies. Even with the game being sold for as little as $5 now, CDPR's executives have made a pretty penny off of this game. Now, of course, what has been lost is the company's reputation, along with many talented veteran developers who have departed and were responsible for creating what I consider one of the greatest games ever made with The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. The only big change thus far within CDPR is the move from Red Engine to Unreal Engine 5, a move that we'll just have to see if it maybe makes development of the next Witcher game easier, something that some feel skeptical about. CDPR has also been struggling to meet deadlines. All of Cyberpunk 2077's future content has been pushed way back. There was an expectation around launch that expansions would have already been released by now, but I suppose that does not consider how badly things turned out. This is not just a point related to Cyberpunk, as The Witcher 3's next-gen version has seen multiple delays and now has been indefinitely delayed as CDPR invests more of their own resources onto the project. There was a time a few years ago in which CDPR was considered by many one of the best developers in this gaming industry. A lot is riding on the success of this next Witcher game, and maybe just maybe the Cyberpunk 2077 expansion to come will give us an indication of just how serious CDPR is about repairing their image. For now, we wait for CDPR to make a move, and of course continue downloading innovative, genre-defining, immersive mods such as breast jiggle physics, because yes, gamers will turn this game around themselves, one jiggle at a time. Anyway, we are very far removed from the game's disastrous launch. Have your feelings on the game changed since then? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, but thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this video or if you found any informative value, and make sure to follow my other social media accounts for updates on new videos. Links are always down in the description below. I'm most active on Twitter giving opinions on news that I do not always get into video form, so do make sure to follow me over there. Also check out my Discord for all sorts of discussion on games. And again, thank you for joining. Consider subscribing for more videos like this, and I'll see you later.